One starry night, a guy found himself deep in thought, pondering all sorts of personal questions. His reflections centered on work-life balance, the relentless grind of daily overtime, and a sense of gratitude for being able to work from home. He was currently inside a local convenience store. His aim was to purchase a favorite drink he enjoyed. Despite being a fully fledged adult, his appearance, thanks to his genetics, made him look remarkably like a kid. He was quite pleased because the drink he desired was alcoholic, and he really needed it after a long day of work. However, the cashier refused to sell it to him for that very reason, its alcohol content. He genuinely didn't understand what the problem was with his purchase. With an audibly annoyed tone, she stated firmly that they didn't sell alcohol to minors. He couldn't grasp why she perceived him as a minor, especially since he looked like a child, not even a teenager, but distinctly a kid. She then elaborated that they'd encountered many instances of minors fabricating their ages to acquire alcohol. He conceded it was a shame, but he was in no mood to argue and simply wanted to buy his drink. Subsequently, she demanded his ID, her expression remaining visibly gloomy. He began to retrieve it, grumbling aloud about having successfully bought an alcoholic drink just 2 days prior. But while searching through his wallet, a realization dawned on him. He had forgotten his ID at work, most likely. He then explicitly stated he was 27 years old, presenting his work ID as proof, and reiterated that he'd worked overtime today, which was precisely why he needed the alcohol. He also mentioned being a frequent customer at the store, but she paid no mind and proceeded to call the police. To avoid any further trouble, he simply decided to leave. He spent the entire walk home cursing profusely, frustrated that he hadn't managed to get the alcohol he so sorely needed. All this trouble was entirely because of his height and appearance. He complained that this had been his life's constant struggle. His height and youthful looks had perpetually felt like a curse. Standing at only 165 centimeters tall and possessing a cute face had always placed limitations on his life experiences. He was always acutely aware that he looked like a child. This was true back when he was in high school. It was true when he was enlisting in the military. And even during routine work checkups, everyone consistently made fun of him for his height. Indeed, because of his height, his life had always been difficult. Even when he went shopping for clothes, the employees frequently recommended children's clothing to him. In restaurants, staff often presented him with the children's meal instead of the adult dish he had ordered. And there was no need to explain how he failed to excel in sports due to his stature. His friends always made him the target of their jokes because of his height. But the worst part of it all was that he was consistently overlooked by girls, simply because he was too short. It almost seemed as though these girls deliberately aimed to make him feel small. All these persistent thoughts invariably made him incredibly mad. When he finally arrived home, he meticulously set up his top-tier gaming setup and then prepared himself for some serious gameplay. His plan was simply to play Dota or League of Legends, games that could even run on a, quote, toaster. He genuinely enjoyed this pastime, but then he found himself complaining about the smell coming from his neighbor's apartment, a constant smoke odor that deeply annoyed him. He opened his window, hoping the smell would dissipate, but it was no use. His neighbor smoked an enormous amount. He angrily wished that the person responsible for the smoke would meet its creator due to a malignant neoplasm. He then decided he absolutely had to go and speak with his mysterious neighbor about the issue that was infuriating him every single night. He gathered his courage, determined to have a polite conversation with the mysterious neighbor, knowing he needed to approach the situation with civility. He was visibly shaking as his hand reached for the doorbell. But then something unexpected happened. A man suddenly flew out of the apartment as if he had been powerfully thrown by someone incredibly strong. The person responsible for the act shouted at him, warning him that he'd be in the other world if he ever returned. The man lay shaking on the ground in evident pain, stating that the mysterious person inside was incredibly strong. Even some concrete from the wall had fallen due to the impact of the blow. The protagonist was visibly scared, as this looked like something out of another world. He wondered if the man on the ground had actually fought a bear. He had no idea what had just transpired, and questioned whether it was truly safe to go over there and ask his neighbor about their smoking habits. After contemplating the situation for a while, and perhaps those birds in the vicinity told him in their bird language that he absolutely should not proceed, he ultimately decided that he couldn't give up now. He reasoned that if he didn't address it now, he might die of a malignant neoplasm anyway, so he had to ask them to stop, even if it meant accelerating his disconnection from life by being, quote, torn apart by a bear. So he arrived prepared with a gift for that person, the most expensive prime beef, hoping to appease the, quote, beast's desire for flesh and blood. He then gathered all his guts once more and pressed the doorbell. The person behind the door inquired, "Who is it?" He replied that he had brought a gift. Then the door opened, and he greeted the person standing there. That person snatched the gift faster than lightning and then slammed the door shut in his face, leaving him standing alone outside. He then tried to speak to the closed door, realizing the neighbor hadn't paid any attention to the tallest adult of the world. Seeing that his attempt had failed, he proceeded to file a complaint with the maintenance office and also waited for that impolite person to emerge from the apartment. But everything failed. That pervasive smoke became a daily problem, so much so that he could not sleep at all. After a week, the smoke consistently woke him in the middle of his beautiful dreams of being 170 centimeters tall and, for once in his life, being ugly. This deeply annoyed him. At 11:28 p.m., when he should have been fast asleep, the smoke served as his early alarm clock. Even if he covered his nose with papers, he could still smell the smoke. He was already completely fed up with the situation, so much so that he could almost see Ella Parka in his mind's eye, a sign of his extreme frustration. Then, he finally lost his temper. He simply could not continue living like this. He then decided to go to the neighbor's house, and this time, he would get what he wanted. He had bought this house with his entire fortune, and he would live under his own terms. So, for the third time, he gathered all his courage, absolutely determined to make his voice heard. The scene then showed a person who was actively smoking and simultaneously doing pull-ups. She was a notably strong woman. But then the doorbell rang. She immediately stopped her workout, her demeanor filled with rage. The protagonist waited for her to emerge from her hideout. He thought to himself that he needed to be tough and reminded himself that he was the victim in this situation, so he had no reason to be afraid. Then the door opened. The woman, with an irritated tone, asked who the brick was that dared to interrupt her while she was working out. He instantly blushed. She was clad in nothing but a large towel wrapped around her. This made him incredibly nervous, causing him to tremble noticeably. Thinking she looked truly scary, he instinctively stated that he was scared. It felt like a puppy being stared down by a wolf. She then asked if he wasn't going to answer her questions, pressing him on why he wouldn't respond. He began to explain that he was her neighbor, desperately trying not to focus on her imposing presence. She took another step forward, purposefully moving closer to him, and asked him to proceed, by which point he was completely red in the face. He was extremely nervous at that moment, faced with such a commanding figure right in front of him. She then asked if he couldn't hear her, and demanded to know why he was there. He attempted to speak, and finally told her that he couldn't bear it anymore. And then he screamed at her, "Stop smoking!" Everything went silent for a second. He then snatched the cigar from her hand, simultaneously trying to shield himself, convinced she was about to unalive him. And she let out a small laugh. She then stated that she was glad he had come because she was starting to get annoyed. As she pulled out another pack of cigarettes, she asked if the one who had been yapping about her, smoking, was really him. She then asked what he was going to do if she kept smoking. He explained that the smoke always found its way into his room, and if she kept smoking, then she simply stared at him while lighting another cigarette, and then exhaled the smoke directly into his face. He coughed, and she then said that she smoked and challenged him to explain what he was going to do about it, asking what he could even do. After mocking him a little more, she explicitly challenged him to make her stop smoking. She then declared that she was certain he had no guts at all to do that, despite the fact that he had already gathered them 3 times to come here and confront her. She then pointed out that he was short and skinny. She then added that he looked like a kid, which deeply touched a nerve within him. A kid? This was the exact trouble he had been enduring all his life. He then recalled all the problems this had caused him, like having to carry his ID everywhere to prove he wasn't a child, and his so-called friends who acted like they didn't know him after being out, simply because he looked like a kid and they treated him like a toy. He also remembered the time he went for his job interview, and they actually wondered if he had lied about his age just to get the position. They had laughed at him, stating he would never be good at anything solely because of his appearance, or every single time he was overlooked by girls just because he looked like a kid. They would always tell him that he embarrassed them, always advising him to wish for better luck in his next life. This utterly enraged him, all those words he had heard throughout his life. And at this exact moment, it felt like the final drop that made the glass overflow. He then snatched the cigar right out of the woman's hand and demanded to know if she truly believed she could look down on him just because he was short. He then backed her against the wall, asking her if she really had the right to do that. He reminded her that she had asked what he could do about her. He then stated that if she kept smoking, he too would like to know what he could do. Then, by accident, he grazed her arm, and the towel shifted, revealing a glimpse of skin. He then saw it. He turned completely red because he had seen a bit more than intended. This made her angry. He quickly clarified that it was an accident. He then retreated to his apartment and, from his doorway, asked her again to stop smoking, leaving her standing there in the middle of the corridor. His heart was beating at an alarming 100 times per second, convinced he was screwed. He fully believed that the bear he had as a neighbor was going to kill him for sure. But outside, that girl stood in silence, clenching her fist. She then grabbed her towel more securely and blushed, thinking that the man who had just gone into his apartment was a nuisance. She thought to herself that he was surprisingly bold, wondering what this new feeling she was experiencing right now was. Her heart was beating so loudly it felt like it could be heard from anywhere in the world, or at least he thought so. It was definitely a surprising encounter that sparked something new. Hidden nearby, another woman was staring at her. The red-haired woman wondered what on earth was happening, and she pondered how in the world Si-young had become so flustered, questioning if it was because of that guy, our protagonist, and she already had some suspicions about what that could be. Later, in the bustling city, the protagonist was at his job, looking at his phone. He was watching a video of a neighbor being injured as a result of complaints about smoking. This left him scared, wondering what he was going to do about his own situation. Then, he remembered the specific occasion. He questioned why he had reacted that way, recalling how he lost his temper when she called him a kid, and how he perceived her discomfort as if she were Eva. He tried to clear his mind and regain his composure, all while his teammates looked at him, seemingly wondering what the hell is happening to him. He felt anxious because she hadn't smoked since yesterday, leading him to worry that she might be plotting something. He couldn't stop wondering about his next move. Then, the vivid image of the man resembling a karate master, who was effortlessly thrown from the apartment and nearly hurt, flashed into his mind. He recalled seeing the man with seemingly broken legs after the incident. He definitely didn't want to end up like that. He started thinking if there was a way to appease the beast. Then, he remembered something important. Someone had referred to her as the Mapo grizzly bear. He immediately proceeded to search for that name on Toogle, a search engine he considered superior to Google in every aspect. He then paused his search. The screen displayed an image of her, a powerful woman, almost sending a man to God with just her fists. The comments section was filled with users questioning if she was truly a woman, and remarking extensively about her incredible strength. It was then that he fully realized she was his neighbor. He was overwhelmed with fear upon seeing this information. Just then, someone called him. His companion asked him why he was watching such a video. In a different location, his companion commented to the protagonist that he would surely lose to her, even if he used a baseball bat. The protagonist inquired if he knew her, and his companion confirmed that he had attended the same high school with her. He commented that one would need a heavy truck to transport all the people she had sent to the infirmary. The protagonist simply couldn't believe it. He stated that he had only managed to see her up close once. However, everyone who attended high school in Seoul knew her. Her infamous nickname was the Mapo grizzly bear, and her achievements included almost defeating all the neighborhood thugs. She was probably the most formidable person in the entire world. Thanks to her, he was never targeted by bad guys, because she had dealt with them before they could even think of bothering him. He clarified that she wasn't inherently a bad person, but she was incredibly hot-tempered. He advised that as long as he didn't cross her, he would be fine. The protagonist then proceeded to prepare to jump from the building to have a special meeting with the creator, alarming his workmate. His workmate desperately tried to prevent him from doing something so drastic. The protagonist, however, asked him to let go, arguing that this was better than getting seriously hurt on his cute little face. His workmate asked what was wrong with him and urged him to talk about his problems, despite the protagonist still believing that ending it all right away was 1,000 times better than any other option. But his companion firmly told him that it was not better. Also, the protagonist's name is Gang Chan, which is quite curious, almost sounding like a member of a gang. Back at the neighbor's home, a woman was meticulously fixing her nails and asked who that guy was. The strongest woman in the world was working out, stating that she didn't know him and had only just met him yesterday. It was a group of 3 girls. One was doing nail care, another was playing with a Switch 2, which the narrator lamentably couldn't afford, and the strong woman was lifting dumbbells. The nails girl asked if he was the guy who had been bothering her lately, and she confirmed it was him, wondering why he didn't just move if he was so angry about her smoking addiction. She then asked her friends for their opinions on the matter. It was then revealed that her name was Si-young Na, and she was 23 years old. She then stated that she wasn't attracted to skinny boys like him. She preferred strong guys, full of energy, someone who could potentially keep up with her. Then, the nail girl accused her of lying. This made Si-young blush. The nail girl commented that she was a terrible liar, because she had personally witnessed it. She had seen Si-young looking flustered and blushing while awkwardly close to the little protagonist, so she wouldn't believe anything Si-young said about it when she had seen it with her own eyes. It was then revealed that the nail girl's name was Lena. She was Si-young's best friend, and also 23 years old, so the narrator decided to stop calling her the nails girl. Lena then hugged her, asking her to be honest suggesting there could be something between them, but Seyoung insisted Lena was wrong and it wasn't what she thought. The other girl agreed with Seyoung. She put down the Switch 2, which the narrator still couldn't afford, and stated that Seyoung was always obsessed with her muscles. Therefore, there was no way she could ever manage to go out with a guy. This angered Seyoung even more, who demanded to know whose side she was on. It was revealed that this friend of Seyoung's was named Lin Yu, so the narrator would no longer refer to her as Gamer Girl or the other girl. Lin then reminded them that the last time Seyoung tried to help a little kid, the kid cried just by looking at her and wouldn't even hold her hand because he was so scared. Lin emphasized that Seyoung had never held hands with a guy before and had been single for about 23 years, which was also her current age. Seyoung then covered Lin's mouth to silence her, insisting it wasn't true. Lin then claimed that Seyoung was trying to turn that skinny boy into her boyfriend, which made Seyoung's face turn even redder. They then pressed her, wanting to know what was going on. Seyoung stated it was all a misunderstanding, while Lena continued to provoke her. Lena pointed out that Seyoung had nothing on her top when she was with him, implying that if there was truly nothing, she would have been fully dressed. And then Lena suggested that perhaps they were close acquaintances, making a knowing gesture with her hands. Seyoung was deeply offended by this accusation and demanded to know what Lena was talking about. She then kicked both of them out of her apartment, stating that she needed to work out. This made her face blush intensely, unable to control her racing heartbeat. She remembered how that little skinny boy had surprised her against the wall. She started to wonder why her heart raced whenever she thought about him, and she decided to work out even more, hoping it would help her process these feelings. Meanwhile, Lena and Lin wondered who that guy was and why Seyoung was acting so strangely. Lena thought that she had never seen Seyoung act like this before, and she was now 100% certain that something was going on between the two of them. Then, while licking her lips playfully, she wondered if he lived next door. With a curious gaze, she was now quite interested in him. She then considered visiting him. Later, the protagonist arrived home, being extremely careful not to be seen by her. He walked on the tips of his feet. He glanced everywhere to ensure he was safe, and felt relieved that he was alone and safe today. He thanked God that he hadn't run into her today, but he knew he couldn't maintain this indefinitely because she lived next door. He opened his apartment door, thinking about how much he had spent on this place, and now he was living in fear. He wondered what he would do if he couldn't avoid her one of these days. Then, a voice called out to him, asking if he was their neighbor. It was Lena. She asked if they could get to know each other better, and if he had a moment to talk, all while she was licking her lips with a mischievous grin. Later, she was utterly surprised by what she was seeing. She asked if he really lived in that apartment. She looked around, commenting that it was really different from her house, describing it as a rich man's house. The place was filled with all the comic books she had always wanted to read. It boasted a brand new air conditioner, a comfy sofa bed, and the latest video game consoles she had always desired, but couldn't afford because YouTube kept retaining her rightful payments. She was then surprised to see he had a console model that was never available in stores because it was always sold out. Her eyes filled with excitement, exclaiming that this was heaven. She then said that she wished she had the chance to live in a house like this. The protagonist, whose name, Gang Chen, the narrator had not previously written down, thought that she had just mentioned being his next-door neighbor. He then deduced that she must live with that big, strong woman named Seyoung, whom he was so afraid of. While she was examining all his belongings, he thought that the woman in front of him looked like a bubbly girl, and he couldn't imagine her being friends with a grizzly bear like his other neighbor. He wondered why he had let her in if he truly didn't know who she was. He hadn't seen any indication that the intimidating girl had sent her here. He felt worried, pondering her intentions for coming to his apartment. She then put down the manga she had been checking and asked the protagonist if he had been with Seyoung yesterday. This question immediately triggered an alarm within him. She stated that she could overlook the fact that Seyoung was not fully dressed, but she emphatically stated that she had never seen Seyoung act like that. She explained that Seyoung usually, quote, talks with her fist, then her mouth, and had never spoken to a stranger for more than 3 minutes. Lena couldn't believe she had talked to him for so long, and considering that he was a man, she was even blushing. Lena then sat down very close to the protagonist. She then stated that she was curious, and whispered into his ear that she wanted to know more about this man. She then proceeded to say that she had some questions she wanted to ask him about the smoking problem. But first, the protagonist then blushed intensely, because she lay down on his lap, saying that she was tired and wanted to rest. She then asked if that was okay. Time passed, and she fell asleep with the manga resting on her chest. The protagonist, blushing, wondered why she had fallen asleep like that. He knew she was up to something because she lived with that intimidating neighbor, but there was also the possibility that he was simply overthinking it. He really wanted her to wake up right now, because her foot had been touching his leg. Then, the possibility of her trying to accuse him of being a pervert and reporting him entered his mind. However, the possibility that she wasn't doing it on purpose was still a consideration since she was currently sleeping, but it didn't seem accidental, as her feet were touching him quite a bit. He then tried to carefully remove her feet from his leg, attempting not to wake her up. He was nervous, but tried to remain calm, as he wasn't doing anything inappropriate. He then gently took her foot, but then she woke up with a scream. This scared him. She then laughed a little and apologized. She revealed that she had actually woken up a while ago, which surprised the protagonist. She mocked him, saying that his reaction was very funny. She then stated that, thankfully, he didn't seem to be a bad person. This made the protagonist stare at her, wondering what she was taking him for. He thought that she was playing with him, and he found her actions very mischievous. He then asked her if she wasn't putting herself in danger by coming to a stranger's house, even if he was her neighbor. She replied that she didn't do this with just anyone. She moved closer to him, stating that he had a cute face, and was also kind and shy. She then declared that he was totally her type, sitting in front of him with her face close to his. She then leaned even closer and asked him what he thought about her. In his mind, he thought he hadn't expected that, and he turned completely red. He then said, while shaking, that she was pretty and cute, but they had just met. He then observed that she created some distance between them. She said she was kidding and that he was too serious, leaving him wondering what had just happened. Then, their attention was drawn by a noise. They went to investigate what was happening. There, a woman had fallen to the ground, inexplicably holding a strawberry, along with apples, an orange, and a pack of cream buns. She then stated that she was there to get Lena. In the next scene, she was seen eating the cream bun. Lena then asked her if Si-young had sent her, and she confirmed it. Lena expressed surprise, thinking Si-young would have come herself. Lin said that she had told Si-young she was here, adding that Si-young's face turned red when she told her, and then instructed her to come look for Lena. Then, the protagonist interrupted and asked Lin how she had managed to get into his house. She simply stated that the door was open. Then, the protagonist took the bun and sternly informed Lin that she was trespassing, emphasizing that he could readily report her to the police. He also directly questioned why she was consuming his bread, to which she casually replied that she had inadvertently stepped on it, implying that if he was going to discard it anyway, she might as well eat it. She further explained that despite her unauthorized entry, she had not attempted to steal anything at all. She merely observed that the door was open and entered solely to retrieve Lena, and feeling hungry, she took a bite of the delicious bread. Subsequently, she earnestly begged him not to report her to the authorities. He then fixed his gaze upon her with intimidating, scary eyes, and she was visibly frightened by his intense stare. Following this, Lena moved closer, deliberately making friendly physical contact with him, and proposed that she could offer an apology on Lin's behalf. She asserted that Lin was fundamentally not a bad kid, but she admitted that her friend was simply not very adept at expressing apologies. She then very earnestly asked him to please forgive her for the transgression. Lena leaned in even closer, her voice soft and persuasive, to ask him kindly for his forgiveness. He responded by looking away, his face visibly blushing due to her close proximity and the situation. And, still averting his gaze, he stated that since they were all neighbors, he could let the incident slide, internally acknowledging that he simply couldn't bring himself to say anything truly harsh or negative directly to her face. He then turned his attention to Lin, pointedly stating that he was going to discard that bread because it had already passed its expiration date. This revelation immediately triggered an alarm of concern in Lin. She then asked, with a hint of confusion, if that wasn't pizza bread, and upon closer inspection, she finally realized that it was, in fact, a cream bun, which explained why it had tasted like such a strange kind of bread. Lena then interjected into the conversation, remarking that they hadn't yet properly introduced themselves to each other. She expressed her strong desire for them to get to know each other correctly and formally. Following this statement, she deliberately took off her overshirt and then calmly placed it on the floor beside her. Looking at him playfully over her shoulder, she declared that there was something she had been wanting to do for a while. This unexpected action caused the protagonist to blush profusely, his face turning a deep shade of red. She then directly asked him for his thoughts on the matter, inquiring what he thought of her actions. And, with a playful gesture, she touched her lips, clearly indicating that she was already contemplating something fun. The protagonist, utterly bewildered by the unfolding events, genuinely wondered what the heck was happening. Then, in the very next moment, both girls were enthusiastically engaged in playing Circle Fit, which was the equivalent of Ring Fit Adventure in this world. This was the activity she had wanted to try, and they were being incredibly loud while doing it. There was an image displayed, illustrating the gameplay of that particular game. Lena was visibly giving her absolute all in the game, exerting maximum effort, and the protagonist was simply observing, internally thinking that he hadn't actually expected anything different or less from her energetic personality. The view from his perspective was quite cool to witness, despite the unexpected nature of the situation. But then, his attention was drawn by the distinct sound of someone knocking on the door. He proceeded to go and see who it was, simultaneously wondering if it might be one of the other neighbors who had come to complain about the excessive noise they were making. He then opened the door. Se-young immediately grabbed him by the shirt and, without hesitation, called him a meddler. She then lifted him off the ground with surprising strength and demanded to know the whereabouts of the other girls. She then sternly warned him that if anything untoward were to happen to them, she was going to do something very bad to him. Following her threat, she loudly called out their names. She then saw Lena actively playing the game, and Lin was sprawled on the floor, declaring that she couldn't do anything more because she was already completely exhausted. Se-young was visibly surprised by this sight, as she hadn't anticipated them being engaged in playing video games. The girls then offered their apologies to the protagonist, who, in his mind, was still processing the fact that he had been almost choked. Lena then directly told Se-young that she should apologize as well. Se-young initially resisted, but Lena sternly scolded her, insisting that she should explicitly say, "I'm sorry," to the protagonist. Then, after enduring some additional scolding from Lena, she mustered all the strength she had within her. But then she suddenly shouted that he was the one who had looked at her first and, in a fit of anger, called him a lunatic. This outburst visibly surprised both Lena and Lin, and Lena immediately asked Se-young what was wrong with her and if she had lost her mind, then quickly told the protagonist that Se-young must simply be shy, and that was the sole explanation for her behavior. However, the protagonist stated that he hadn't expected her to apologize at all, given their previous interactions. He firmly declared that she had called someone she had just met a kid, and then proceeded to enter his house and almost choked him. He wanted to get some things straight regarding the situation. He explicitly stated that she was partially undressed, and if she had a tendency for undressing in public, then he was not the meddler in this scenario. She was. She asked, "What?" while her face took on a gloomy, menacing look, and he internally thought that she looked genuinely scary. She then pinned him against the wall with force and curtly told him to forget it. She then stated that he had complained about her smoking habits and suggested that they should put an end to their dispute once and for all. She then argued that she was smoking in her own house, so there was no reason why she should do what he said, especially since it was not illegal. She sternly told him not to cause any more trouble. He looked at her, thinking that he was very scared right now, but he was already utterly tired of her turning his house into a smoke-filled room. He then retorted that her stance was ridiculous. He asserted that predators never remember what they did wrong and emphatically stated that she had no shame. He argued that someone might mistakenly think he was the one smoking, and that living there was incredibly painful solely because of her. He told her that she should be apologizing to him, and yet she still wasn't. He then declared that if she continued smoking, he would assemble a committee or officially report this matter, but then she interrupted him, saying that he was getting too close, but he asked why that was important or relevant to the discussion. Then, Lena interrupted the escalating argument by holding his hand. She then commented that the smoking was indeed a problem, but as neighbors, they shouldn't fight, and proposed an alternative solution. He asked what that solution was. She suggested that if Se-young agreed to smoke outside, then they, Lena and Lin, could come to his apartment anytime they wanted. Se-young immediately got angry and stated emphatically that Lena should not be making decisions on that matter. Lena then explained their living situation, stating that they had no Wi-Fi, no air conditioning, no computer, and nothing else. She even mentioned that their washing machine was broken, and she reminded Se-young that because of her actions, they were at risk of getting kicked out at any moment if she caused any more trouble. Lin then added that if they were indeed kicked out onto the streets, she had nowhere to go. Then, after thinking about it for a moment, Se-young conceded that it wasn't like she was trying to torment him on purpose. She then looked at him, and he, in turn, averted his gaze from her. She then admitted that it didn't sound like a bad idea, while Lena was openly celebrating the potential agreement. The protagonist, meanwhile, silently wondered if he didn't have a say in this, as it was, after all, his house. He then considered the situation and thought that this arrangement was ultimately for the better, as it effectively solved the persistent problem of the smoke. He also thought that they wouldn't come very often, and since they were neighbors, he could very well get to know them better through this arrangement. Lena then declared that since nobody had said anything in objection, it was a definite yes. She then stated that they had better introduce themselves properly, as they would be seeing each other often from now on. She introduced herself as Lena Fox, stating that she was 23 years old. This surprised the protagonist, because Fox sounded more like a nickname than a formal surname. She explained that her mother was Korean and her father American, which was why she had such a unique name, and currently, her parents were abroad. She also pointed out the fact that her eyes were blue, and told him that he could simply call her Lena. She then stated that the, quote, girl's name was Se-young Na, and she appeared cold and unfriendly. But, Lena added, she had the, quote, best strong presence of all. This comment enraged Seyoung, but caused the protagonist to turn red with embarrassment. Lena then proceeded to introduce Lin, describing her as the baby of the group, and the protagonist in that moment wondered when she had managed to take the ice cream out of the fridge. Lena then mentioned that they actually had one more housemate, but she wasn't currently there because she always worked overtime. She then held the protagonist's arm, stating that it was enough for introductions, and asked him if he was going to introduce himself. Holding his arm even tighter, she said that she wanted them to become better friends. He stated that he was Gang-chan and was 27 years old, adding that he hoped they would get along well. She then asked, in a mocking tone, if he was indeed older than them. Then, Seyoung realized with a surge of anger that Lena was clearly trying to make him pay her bills. Lena continued to hold him, looking at him with a friendly gaze, stating that she was, quote, just trying to make friends with him, while Seyoung, disgusted, told Lena to wipe that silly look off her face. Then, looking at him as if deeply in love, Lena told him that he could be more comfortable with them from now on, while he internally thought that she was scary, but for a very different reason than Seyoung. That's how he ultimately ended up accepting the deal. He initially thought that they wouldn't be there every day. They would just come a few days and then never return again. But he was wrong. They came every single day to play video games. They would come to watch him playing while enjoying manhwas and various snacks. They even came when he was doing other things, and he even gave them his passwords. His house and his fortune were no longer truly his. They now belonged to the three girls. It had become their regular meeting spot. He deeply regretted having accepted them in. But then, one day, something significant happened. It was a day when he had just finished working. He was in the process of returning home. He was already completely fed up with everything that had transpired and all the overtime he had performed. Those three girls came to his place every single day, and that constant presence had completely overwhelmed him. Just to get one day of rest, he had to leave his job early on the day they said they weren't coming, and he couldn't go back on the promise that was already made. But today was his own day. The day when he could finally rest from those three energetic companions who were draining his life. He planned on watching movies all day and playing some video games, just what I do every day, actually. He opened the door, determined to enjoy some time alone. But there she was, Seyoung, as if God had brought her to Earth. He wondered what on earth she was doing there and turned completely red from looking at her like that. She then threw him her towel and told him